What we're going to do today is we're going to have a conversation about behaviors. We're going to start talking about some very general concepts and then kind of get into it a little bit more. This is super informal. You can interrupt me if you want me to talk about something that is completely off topic. That's fine too. I'm super open about this. To start, your kids are amazing. They're beautiful and sweet and kind and funny and smart and intuitive, and they're rule followers and they want to do what's right, and you're all waiting for me to say but there is no but. You know this about them. And then we put them in environments where they're expected to change things about themselves that they cannot possibly change. And then the environment blames them for being disruptive or non-compliant, which is the worst word in the world. Your kids see and experience the world in a different way, and they're not wrong. Yep, there are organic issues that create challenges, but if we can remove all of the stuff that gets in their way, we can see these kids thrive and meet their goals and do all the things that they want to do. What our goal and our mission has to be is to help people understand that once the environment meets their needs, you can have the very best experience. Your child can be the best of themselves. It's not up to your child to change, it's up to the environment to change, it's up to us to change. So that's kind of where we're going to start. We are going to talk about really all the stuff that gets in their way. That's really what we're going to talk about today. What I want, you guys will have these slides, so this is kind of about Latham Centers. You don't really need to know that right now. Here's what I want you to do. Every day, every morning, every night, I want you to think about these things. The first three are absolutely related. If something's not working, if your child's in school, if your child's with an agency, your child's a child or an adult, if it's not working, don't do it. Just because it's working for 100 other families that you talk to, if it's not working for your child, stop doing it. Your child's behavior does not define you as a parent, and I think this is the number one thing that I want you to walk away with. Hi. If you are working with a school or anybody who's making you feel like your child is having any number of behaviors because of your parenting, go somewhere else. That is absolutely not true. And stop comparing yourself to other parents. This happens, all mothers and fathers do this across the board. You guys take it to another level, right? Every child is different, and I can't stress this enough. There is nothing you can do to predict what behaviors are going to come up later on. So you see parents of really little kids, like a 2-year-old scratching a mosquito bite, and they start freaking out that they're going to skin pick. No, that's not the case. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But you can't live every day worrying about what might happen 10 years from now. There is no possibility of you being able to tell that. Oftentimes we see, especially in schools, if you bring something to them and say that you want to try something, that you read something, that your child is reacting to something at home really well, and they say, we've already done that before. We tried that and it didn't work. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try it again. Really, when you're working with someone with PWS, oftentimes you take a bunch of things and throw them at the wall and see what sticks, and you do it until it doesn't work anymore. Really, I mean, that's kind of what you do, right? And you have to be working with people who are flexible enough to do that. You can't control everything, but you can control how you react to everything. Your stress levels can get so high that can actually make you sick. And you guys are really famous for being super stressed all the time and worrying about every single little thing. And this goes to the last thing on the list too. Have to take care of yourselves. You can't do You can do anything in the world, but you can't do everything. So you have to be reaching out to people. You have to know how to ask for help. And the other thing we talked about, your children are a gift. If you're working with people who don't think your kids are the most amazing thing in the world, go to somebody else, right? Because your kids, like I said, are absolutely amazing. And if you're working with a group of people, whether it's at a school or people who are aides, anything, if they don't think your kids are amazing, go somewhere else, because they are. So we're going to go on to some of the things that can get in the way, right? Some of the stuff that can get in the way of your kids living their very, very best life. So here are the things, right? So let's talk about this. Fear of failure. Oftentimes, and we talked about this just a few minutes ago, most of your kids are rule followers. They want you to be super, super proud of them. And when they don't, they feel really bad about themselves, right? So oftentimes you hear people, especially teachers, say, we had this big event, he wanted to go, and he self-sabotaged, right? He had this incident, he had a behavior, and then he couldn't go on this field trip that he really, really wanted to go on. And kind of put the blame back on your child, right? When the truth is, your kids know what they need. They know that they need the structure, and they can get really, really nervous about something that's coming up, even if it's really, really good, right? So you have to be able to work with that child in a way that they understand that this day is going to be different, this field trip's going to be different, but here's what it's going to look like, right? You just can't say, we're going to be going to this museum on Tuesday at school and leave it at that. They still need that same structure. So you have to be able to work with the schools on giving them that, so they don't feel like they have to have some sort of behavioral event because they're scared of going on this trip, because they know it might make them nervous. They know they might have an incident, and they're letting everyone down, right? So let's kind of move on to sensory processing disorder. This is a really big one. And just read what's at the bottom, because it couldn't possibly be more true. So, most kids with PWS also have sensory processing disorder. And I'm not an OT, so I can't speak from an OT's point of view, but I'm old, I've been around a while, so I've seen a lot of things. So I'm speaking from experience. So you probably are already very, very familiar with tactile issues. So kids with PWS, kids with sensory processing disorder, are either seekers of sensory or avoiders of sensory. So when you're looking at the tactile, it's often avoiders in PWS, because you'll see things like you can't tolerate new clothes, tags on the clothes. Oftentimes you have kids who really refuse to wear underwear. And I don't know why anyone makes a big deal about this, because how would you even know if someone was wearing underwear, right? Pick your battles. We hear from schools a lot, like, he will not wear underwear. Well, who cares? I don't care if he's wearing underwear. I don't even know if he's wearing underwear. But it's the tension, right? They can't handle that feeling. Oftentimes they want to sleep naked. Again, who cares if they're sleeping naked? You'll see kids who really have a difficult time with auditory. And this is because they experience the world differently. So they might hear things that you're not hearing. Those lights, what are they called? Not halogen lights. Yes, yeah. You can actually hear those if you listen really carefully, and oftentimes they have those in school. So a lot of times you'll have kids who need to have those noise-canceling headphones on. That's fine. Proprioceptive is a really important one, because oftentimes you'll hear kids with PWS being described as clumsy, or like a bull in a china shop, that they're always banging into things. You'll see them walking down the hall, bouncing off the walls instead of just walking. Proprioceptive is how your muscles feel in space, right? So they might go to pick something up that's really light and pick it up really heavy, because they really don't know how to judge how their muscles work. But the most important one on this list is vestibular. So your vestibular sense is your sense of balance, right? And this is actually the first sense that babies master, because they're always moving their heads back and forth. But babies with PWS aren't moving their heads back and forth because of their muscle tone. So oftentimes you have kids growing up who haven't mastered the vestibular sense. And what you'll see is kids who kind of freak out about walking on anything that isn't flat, sand, rocks, inclines. You'll often notice that they won't bend over to pick something up, and people describe it as being lazy. It's not lazy. They literally feel like they're going to tip over all the time. So the good news is that you can get really good at this doing different activities. So you can master this vestibular sense at any point in your life. Any sporting event, any sports teams, horseback riding, swing, seesaw. At Latham Centers, we created a playground just for the vestibular sense. So we have all sorts of balance beams and stuff like that. We saw a pretty drastic decrease in behaviors once we had the kids playing on that for just a few weeks, because they were able to master that and feel like they could actually sit in a chair and not tip over, right? That was a big deal. So the next one, this is a really big one. So again, many kids with PWS also have executive functioning disorder. Executive functioning disorder is your brain's way of figuring out how to get from step 1 to step 10, right? How to do everything from make your coffee in the morning to plan a wedding and everything in between. That's executive functioning. So when you're doing well and going about your routine and you get to work and you realize that you don't even remember how you got there, that's your executive functioning disorder being on point, right? And there are days when you're super stressed and you're sitting at the edge of your bed holding your socks going, I don't know, I think these go on my feet, right? That's executive functioning disorder. You're not on point. You're really distracted. You can't figure out how to get from step 1 to step 2. Kids with executive functioning disorder kind of live in that space all the time. So the other part of executive functioning disorder is it's really hard to tell what an emergency is. So our kids pretty much live in the space where everything that upsets them is an emergency, right? So you could have someone who's not familiar with the syndrome walk into a room and see a child having an absolute tantrum, screaming, crying, being very upset, and you would say, what just happened to that child? Did they just get terrible news? And you'd say, nope, they can't find their crayons, right? And that's kind of where our kids live, right? This is where they are all the time. If we have something like a chart like this is really, really effective, because every time that happens, if you can say to them, is this a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they actually will learn this over time. And we use this at school, and it works very, very well. So they actually have little cards with this laminated that they carry around, and you can help them figure out if it's a 0 or a 5 or what it is in between, and it is actually very, very helpful. So imagine having PWS, going into a classroom, being not understood, having noises around, wearing something uncomfortable, having people not understand that you, on some days, you can say to someone, I need you to get your shoes, come downstairs, meet me out at the car, and they'll do it. And on other days, they'll stand there and are still processing get your shoes, and people are getting frustrated that every day, this is the same routine, they know how to do this, they've done it, the last 6 months with no problem, and all of a sudden today they're not. It must be an issue of being non-compliant, right? That's the assumption. And that's not true at all. The truth is, it's executive functioning getting in the way. It is very, very difficult for a person with PWS to have downtime that isn't structured. And it doesn't mean you have to be with them, but it means that if you're gonna have them go hang out in their room, make sure you give them the options that they have to do, because otherwise they're gonna sit there and not know where to start. And that's really the biggest issue. It's not completing a project, it's not doing the project, it's how to start the project. And that is truly 100% executive functioning, okay? So here's another thing, and you guys will have this, but these are kind of the big ones, right? These are kind of the big behaviors that everyone freaks out about and worries that their kid's gonna have. These are kind of a list of the behaviors and what you can do about them. Again, this is very child specific, so not everything's gonna work for every child. That's just not realistic at all. If it's not working, stop doing it. But if you've tried it in the past, go ahead and try to do it again. Of this list, what are you guys most either worried about or dealing with right now? What is the thing that you are the most concerned about? And it can be not on this list. Just shout it out.
Outbursts.
Outbursts?
Aggression.
So tell me about aggression.
Like being very physical, wanting to hurt you or hurt teachers.
Is that happening or are you worried about it?
No, it's happening.
How old?
7.
Okay.
First grade.
Okay.
Not every day, but when
Sure.
it happens, it's
Sure.
pretty scary.
Do you know, is there a pattern for when it happens?
No,
Okay.
not that we can identify yet.
Okay. All right. Who else is dealing with aggression in a child that age? So you, okay. All right. So is it the same thing? Is it at school?
Last year, it was like, we had a long, because she was hitting, so then when she would
Sure.
get angry, instead of just outbursts, it was, she would like either hit me or like grab you and make that mean face. Like, yeah.
I know that mean face. Yeah. Yeah.
I get it from a mom.
Yeah. Okay.
And if-
Yeah.
One statement that resonated with me for many years is
Yeah.
that behavior is communication.
Mhm.
So when the child is acting out aggressively or not, he or she is trying to communicate something to you. So often at school, they have a hard time identifying what that is. We obviously have a better idea because we're with them 24/7, but that always resonates. They're trying to communicate something. So
100%.
finding it isn't always easy, but
Right. Finding it isn't always easy, but you have to be sure that you're in a place where people are willing to really try to look for it, right? Because nothing happens without a reason behind it. And oftentimes what you'll hear people say is, I don't know, he just all of a sudden started to get upset and there was no reason for it. That's ridiculous. There was absolutely a reason for it. We just maybe haven't figured it out yet. And sometimes it takes years to figure out what's going on. And sometimes it takes 5 minutes. But you have to be in a place where you're always looking for it, right? Where you're always looking. The other thing that's super important to remember is that if you feel like you're dealing with something that no one else is dealing with, you're wrong. The best possible thing that you can do is say it out loud, even if it's embarrassing, even if it makes you feel like you did something really wrong. We talked about that before. You can't let anybody make you feel like your child's behavior is a direct result of your parenting, because that's bullshit, right? It just is. You have to say it out loud. You have to talk about it. There are people out there who have been through the exact same thing. Even if it's really, like I said, even if it's gross, even if it's embarrassing, say it out loud, talk about it, even if it has to be online. Because that's the only way that you're going to be able to manage this, to take this on. We talked about all the amazing things about your kid, but there are challenges, right? And they're hard. But there are people out there who have been through it. There are people out there who can help with it. And that's kind of what I want to talk about right now. Like, is there anything going on that you really have been holding on to or you're dealing with and you really don't know what to do? Yes.
Obsessive compulsive behaviors related to medical, where
Yeah.
he is going to get to the ER in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
At any time of the day or night.
Yep.
Will seek medical care.
Yes.
Figured out how to get on the computer, do teledocs. Figured out a way
Yes.
to Uber in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing, the skill set that I've
100%.
seen.
How old?
Now he's 20.
Okay. So this is actually really common. And there's a couple of reasons for it. One, there's a lot of attention. You get a lot of attention at the emergency room. But nurses are really sweet, and you also get a lot of food, right? So what we did, honestly, this was a huge problem. So at Latham, we have 100 individuals with PWS, 40 kids and 60 adults. So the kids are on a campus, they go to residential school, the adults are in the community. There was so much of kids trying to get to the emergency room and the adults trying to get to the emergency room. What we ended up doing was working with our local hospital So they know that any person from Latham Center is going to the emergency room is NPO, which means nothing by mouth. Any meal that they are at the ER for, we bring to them. So they are getting the exact same food that they would be getting if they were home. And it sucks, right? They're like, well, this didn't do anything. So it stopped. It really did. I mean, for the most part, it stopped because they weren't getting the Jell-O and the juice and all the stuff that the nurses, the crackers and the graham crackers, they weren't getting any of it. So in their charts, it says NPO. And when they go, if they go and they're there for a breakfast, we're bringing the breakfast to them and going, there's your food. And it really did stop. So you can try it. Are you guardian?
We're in the process of that.
Good. Then you can do it. Yeah. Yeah, if you're not guardian, you can't. If you're not his guardian, you can't do it.
We think he may just be going there to get a soda, but it's really becoming a very expensive soda.
Very expensive soda, yes. But it's a soda, and he's not paying for it, right? So it's totally worth it. Right? I get it. Yeah.
Once they catch on at one ER, then he switches to another ER.
Well, see, that's the thing. So where I'm from, you have to go to the closest emergency room by law. So I don't know how, unless he's in a different place, then he could try to do it. But I would, honestly, I'd just visit the local emergency rooms and say, unless you want him here every day, do this for us. Because they don't want it either, because they're trying to, there's a lot of resources for that soda. And it really did stop it. Yeah. What else? What else is going on out there that you guys are freaking out about? Yes?
Something that you said about how they can't have unstructured downtime.
Yeah.
I find that to be a big problem when my 6-year-old is at school. He's in kindergarten. And anytime there's unstructured anything,
Yes.
I mean recess, he'll
Yes.
sit under the play structure and pick his fingernail.
Sure.
Or like when I drop
Really
off,
bad
all the
things
kids are
happen when
playing.
they're bored.
Yeah,
Really
all
bad
the
things
kids are
happen.
playing,
Yeah.
and he will walk in and just take a seat and kind of start picking at his fingernails because he, they're all playing with things.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know, like you said, I guess, where to start.
That's
So-
right. It really is about where to start. Because once you start them on something, they want to do what the other kids are doing. So is the school willing to help with that? Like, does he have an iPad that he uses, or is there something that he can have pictures of? Because 6, he's probably not reading, or not.
I mean, he has an aide, and
Yeah.
she's there to kind of intervene if need be, but to let him have some independence as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just a matter of having a conversation. I don't
Yeah.
know if they do anything at recess, though. I think they just kind of let him do his thing, and maybe.
But he could have options for recess. I mean, she could say, as his aide, I hope that she sees her job as preventing issues also, rather than just intervening once they happen. So he could have a list of things that he could do. You could swing for 5 minutes, you can do this, and he could just pick them.
So it's almost like I feel like that's ABA type, like she should have a schedule with
Sure.
like ABA type activities. Okay, let's make our schedule more recess.
Sure, yeah, I think so.
It's responsible to those ABA
Absolutely,
schedules, but
yes.
it requires like constant
Yeah.
monitoring and guidance.
That's right, yes. And everyone wants their kids to be as independent as they possibly can be, but you might be asking too much. He might not be able to be that independent right now, and that's just the
Will
truth.
they eventually get to that level?
Maybe, maybe not.
Like my daughter started to have problems at research as well, and so she was not interacting with the other kids and staying there, and she started like to pick on her nose and with anxiety. So the teacher and I, we agreed on that she could bring some like small toys, and she was the only one with the small toys, so she was actually now the center of attention, and this I explained with her. And now she was like really like, oh, I want to share my toys with all of you guys. So it just changed completely the dynamic. So now she's like really willing to get, something new like from home and bring them to school.
And they're allowing her to continue reading them.
Yeah. So I think that was a small change in anyone. So.
Sure. They'll let you know how independent they can be. And so this kind of goes back to making sure that whatever goals you have are their goals and not your goals, right? You might want them to be independent for 50% of the time. They might only be able to be independent for 10% of the time. And you have to be okay with that. Even if that's going to be the case for the next 10 years or the next 40 years, you have to be okay with that. There are absolutely things that you want your kids to do, and we want those kids to be able to do those things if they want to. But you also have to be okay if they don't do those things, right? Because then, like I said, we're talking about individuals that really want to make you proud. They have to know that you're going to be proud even if you don't meet the goals that you have for them. So try really hard to figure out what goals they have for themselves. Yeah.
I was going to say, just like more to the behaviors, I think my daughter's is the Perseveration.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm more frustrated with the, I don't know if some of you guys get when your daughter looks so typical, I feel like they keep wanting to be like, she can do more. And I'm like, I know she looks typical,
Yep.
but
Yep.
her brain works so differently. I was going to understand
You're doing fine.
But, thank you. But one of the things with behaviorally, I feel like, is they want to calm her, and by calming her, like, I'll give an example. Last week, Father Rick said at chapel that no one has homework today, but then her particular classroom got homework.
Oh,
And she was like, no, Father Rick said.
Right,
Yeah,
of course.
and then she's saying it like 1,000 times. The teacher starts talking to her, reassuring her, like, well, it's not Father Rick we listen to, and basically, yeah.
So that was really mean. I mean, honestly, that was a lot to ask of her not to be upset about that.
Right.
Father Rick needed to come back and set it straight. Really.
So I was just finding kind of the combination of, feeling like, say, the teachers want her to, like, they almost have higher goals than I do for her as far as independence.
Yep.
And then I just think a lot of people, even out in public or with teachers, they always want to tend to her. They help her stay on a topic instead of switching the topic. So they'll keep talking about homework for 20 minutes with her, and then that leads to an emotional outburst.
Of course. Yeah.
And it's hard to tell people, I know this works with other children, but for my daughter, you're helping her, and her anxiety is now growing. And she's staying.
Are they listening when you say that?
And I feel like, maybe, that's how I feel, like, I don't feel like you're listening.
It doesn't sound like they're listening.
Right.
Okay. As far as the perseveration goes, kids with PWS live with a baseline of high anxiety, which is a pretty crappy way to be, right? I mean, they're always anxious. So when you do something like that, her anxiety is going to go, it actually was mean what he did. Her anxiety is going to go through the roof because she wants to do what's right. She does. Is there homework? Is there not homework? I mean, it really was. It's a really good example of how things can go bad, right? And you can say 1,000 times there's no homework, but Father Rick said there was. So honestly, I'm not kidding. Father Rick needed to come back and say I was wrong. There's no homework, right? Or there is homework, or whatever the story was. So. No one's going to be able to say the exact same thing the exact same way every time. So, because the kids will go to one person to the next and ask the same thing. When you have someone who really does ask the same question over and over, you can easily take care of that with writing it down, laminating it. Here's the answer. Here's the question. Here's the answer. And then just tell them to read the card, or say, look at the card. You know the answer. And that's usually people do, like, you can ask 3 times, and then after the 3rd time you go back and say, you know the answer, you tell me the answer, and it usually stops. But here's an issue of what we call like a detour. Like, you do everything right, everyone has all the plans, the answer was the correct way every time, except then you have this external Father Rick who really messed it up, right? So honestly, in that case, I really think it is just validating that you're sorry that this happened, that she got the wrong information, and you know how anxious this is making her, and just try to get through to the next day. Because in that case, that really was, a rock thrown in the wheel. And that's a lot to ask her to be okay with that. In that case, thank you.
Our son just gets really stuck on like literal plans.
Yeah.
So I always think it's like ironic how like logical and literal his brain works when sometimes he processes things slower.
Yeah.
But his school this year, and he just goes to a typical school, adopted a really wonderful program called social thinking. and it's by this woman, Michelle Garcia Winter, who's like phenomenal, and it's all about flexible thinking. And it's for every kid. It's for
Sure,
typical
yeah.
kids, for their whole neurodiverse population. And so we've carried a lot of that in at our house with flexibility and flexible thinking for situations exactly like that. And it's made like a tremendous difference.
That's really nice.
So, yeah, I'd recommend people looking into that. It's really helped with this like idea of just flexibility in life. 'Cause
Sure.
that's the hard spot for
That's
Prader-Willi,
awesome.
following
So-
the routines and then being able to be flexible with the changes.
Nice. So, Amy, hi. Didn't you guys have something called Flex Brain or something? You guys did stuff with flexible thinking. Amy's in the back of the room. She's in the Pittsburgh Institute. Amy McTighe. Right. So did you guys, because I know we have a lot of kids who come to Latham from Pittsburgh Institute, and they always talk about Flex Brain, so I'm assuming it came from you.
Yeah, we did.
What was it a program, or was it just teaching them like in the moment?
It was actually the same program that we talked about.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Great.
the same one.
Good,
So,
good.
yeah, it was teaching them to take, that flexibility of this might happen, life happens, and you gotta run with it and support them in the environment and try to think on your feet type of thing.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So we use social stories every day, different ones. So, and you can do them just on like a plain piece of paper. Like you can do them super, super quick. And kind of going back to Father Rick, you probably could have done a social story about that, about how sometimes people are wrong, sometimes people get the wrong information, and we have to be okay with that and move on from that and trust that the answer you're getting is correct. Something that she could just look at. Sometimes people use like stickers, or if you can draw, which I can't, so I never do that. But you could really do them like in the moment, super quick. Once you get used to doing it, you can do them like 5 minutes. So, and that helps for them to actually read a story about someone else who was told that they had homework and then they didn't. Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir.
An issue we're having, we have a 6-year-old, we get non-compliance, but
Yeah.
with a sense of humor, like where she's laughing and I think it's funnier as we get more upset. And so it's like really, and then afterwards she's kind of confused, it seems like.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm misreading that on her part quickly.
Have you tried acting really bored? Like so bored, like you can't even, like you're about to fall asleep when she's doing something?
If we don't initiate or we don't respond and we're just like, hey, whatever, you take your time, we're
Yeah.
here all night, then it doesn't happen, but we're not perfect. And so
Yeah, sure.
sometimes, we're trying to get things done, like dinner at some point in the evening, so we want fast to be done. And so you get sucked into it. And so once she starts kind of laughing as we're
Yeah.
getting mad, it's really hard
Yeah.
not to get
Yeah.
mad. And so you kind of reach your breaking point of like, okay, go to your room. And then
Yeah.
she's fine after it cools down, but
Sure.
what's going on in her head?
Sometimes what you're seeing is someone who really can't read social cues, and oftentimes that's the case, is that I don't know that she knows you're mad. She might be really confused about your reaction. And there's some really awesome things online about reading facial expressions, and there's tons of them. You can YouTube it. They're made really for people on the autism spectrum, but it works. I would try that, just a few, sessions of it, having her watch the facial expression, then you pick A, B, C, or D, like what the emotion is. She might be confused about that, or she might be bored and it's entertaining to see you guys get really upset. It truly might be that. If that's the case, if you see like a pattern, like around when she's doing it, I would give her some sort of activity that she likes in whatever that pattern is. If it's always like right after dinner or right when she gets home from school, and see if you can't kind of create a new path in her brain. Rather than having to be entertained by you guys turning red, she can be entertained by a sticker book or whatever, word book or whatever she likes to do. Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
And it's kind of feeding off of that. I have a similar situation with my 6-year-old, and it's always when I need to be doing something or talking to somebody or cooking
Yes.
or doing, and he it escalates.
Yeah.
And then I really, 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 all I need in this world is for him to walk away and give me some space.
Yes.
And it 1,000% has never once actually happened.
Yes.
Where he will listen to me and remove himself.
That's right.
And stop talking at me.
That's
and
right.
Stop being in my face.
That's
and
right.
Stop being on top of me
Right.
when I am like going through the roof with
Because
stress.
even bad attention is attention, right?
Right.
So
But-
in that
but
moment,
it's-
you're not paying attention to him.
Right.
And he's going, wait a minute, you're supposed to be paying attention to me. So if you can plan it, if you know you're going to be making dinner or know you're getting a call, again, give him something to do. Because he's probably kind of freaking out, like, what if I need something? She's not paying attention to me. In this moment, I don't know what to do. It goes back to executive functioning disorder. I have no idea what to do in this moment, so I'm going to aggravate mom, right? But if you start him on something, he may be able to just do that and leave you alone for a few minutes.
But it's almost like once you get into that situation and you realize, oh shoot, I needed to give him something to do. He's already at that level where it's.
There's nothing you can do at that point.
There's nothing.
There truly is nothing you can do
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
I would pay attention to him, let him settle down, and your phone call or whatever is going to have to wait
I end up
until
like-
you settle him and then give him something to do.
I end up like locking myself in the bathroom.
Of
and
course
he's
you
at
do.
the door,
Of
like,
course.
I'm like,
I can see it. Of course you do. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Okay, but the key is just planning in advance. as
If
much
you
as
can,
possible.
and you can't always do that. You can do that 100 times, and the 101st time you're going to be in the bathroom with him banging on the door, right? But the goal really is to decrease it, because you're probably not going to erase this behavior forever, right? Little boy, he's going, and a typical little boy might do the same thing. In this case, he'll do it every single time, so that's why you need to plan for it. Like I said, it's probably won't go away forever, but the goal is to decrease it. So maybe you can get one phone call in a week instead of none, right? Yes.
So we have a non-compliance issue occasionally regarding timing. So the example is getting on the school bus. So we use visual schedule, we use all that, right?
Yep.
So he knows if he doesn't get on the bus, right, well, someone's got to take the bus to school, and that's what he wants.
Yep.
I mean, it is just, like, I'm holding my breath every day that this kid can get this bus.
Yes.
And he's, like, following all the techniques, and it'll be great for a month, and then he's like, nope, I'm not doing it. So how do you respond to something like that where it is a time when you do need him to go?
So I know whether it's clinically appropriate or not, bribery works really well. For real. Like, he gets a prize if he goes on the bus five days a week. On Friday afternoon, he gets off the bus, he gets something he likes. Like, for real. And I know maybe that's not sustainable for the rest of his life, but for right now, he needs to take the bus. Give him something. I mean, especially because he's doing something that he doesn't want to do. Like, he's doing it just because he's supposed to. Give him a little something for it. I think so. I think it's fine. Amy.
Yeah, the other thing that was helpful, families that I supported.
Amy's freaking out by that answer, by the way, just so you know.
I'm actually going to say the exact same thing.
Oh, good. All right, good.
The other thing that has helped with families that I work with is to give the student a job at school that's really exciting.
100%. Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I have to feed the fish.
Right when I get off the bus. Yep.
Fifth grade classes.
Mhm.
Or I have to feed the animals, and if this
Love
doesn't
it.
happen, school never happens. You know
Love
what I
it.
mean? Like, it's
Yep.
such an important job.
Yep.
So yeah, that has helped a
Love
lot
it.
with families support.
So we have issues with, especially with the kids who go home on home visits, and then they have to come back to school, and they're like, well, I'm just not going to go, right? I'm just going to stay at home. So we have a donkey program. So one of our homes has 8 now donkeys. So we have it. So the day they come back, they're scheduled to feed the donkeys. And if they don't come back, no one's going to feed the donkeys. So they're like, I got to get back to feed the donkeys. So you give them something really important to do. They don't know that someone else will feed the donkeys if they're not there, right? But I have to go back to feed the donkeys. So it really helps. I mean, it helps because they're performing a task that's really important, right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, geez, now I'm overwhelmed. All right. You guys have to decide amongst yourselves who's going to go, because we probably only have time for 1 or 2 more questions. And there's 3 hands up. All right, I'm going with you. Sorry.
So I don't know if this falls under anxiety or obsessive compulsive, but I have a 10-year-old, and he is such a collector and hoarder of certain things that I can't determine whether this is limiting him because it's all he wants to do, or if it's a positive thing because it allows him to focus on something that brings him
What's he
joy.
hoarding? Can I ask what he's hoarding?
Decks of cards.
Yep.
apples to apples games.
Okay. So,
And Simon games.
okay, so this actually goes back to what Amy was just talking about, is there is kind of an inherent need to be important, to be helpful, because I want to be helpful. So in that case, I would say, I would give a limit, and it is really, it's crazy because the collecting actually makes him think that his anxiety is going down when it's actually not. But anyway, you can have 5 of each game, and when you get to number 5, you have to donate 2 to either a nursing home, a senior center, the homeless shelter, wherever, and let him be the one to bring it and have him donate it. What we often do, because hoarding is really a big deal, especially in our adult homes, because we don't have as much, they have a lot more freedom than the kids do. We take a picture of what's acceptable in the room and what isn't. And what's acceptable cannot be perfect. You have to allow some bit of collecting because it really is something that he wants to do. You can't say you can never do it. But here's what we're okay with. Here's what we're not okay with. So when it gets to the point we're not okay, then we're gonna start donating things with your help. And that's kind of how we do it. Go for it, and then I will make time for you. Yeah.
So skin picking.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is boredom, like in the car ride.
Yeah.
But some of it is like sneaking just to do it, like
Sure.
sitting on the toilet for extra times,
Yeah.
and then I go in there, and it's
Yeah.
mostly just fingernails and cuticles. That's it.
Yeah.
But I'll go in and she'll just be like this,
Yeah.
like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And
So it feels good. So what they'll describe to you, if you're able to ask someone who has this behavior, who is someone with a higher IQ or someone who really understands their behaviors, they'll tell you that it feels good. It's kind of like a rush, not unlike people who have cutting behavior, right? So it's an endorphin rush. They have kind of a muted endorphin release, so it kind of takes a lot for them to release endorphins. They have super high pain tolerance, so they're doing things to their skin that we could never tolerate, that they're actually just getting kind of a rush from it. So what you can do in that case is try to put some sort of a barrier. Anything slick like Vaseline, really thick, like, not like lotion, like body butter, anything, so it's gonna be harder to get to that.
but like all the time, all day long.
If as much as you can, because if she's just doing cuticles now, it's probably going to progress to something else later. So the sooner you can stop her from doing this, the better. Even if you have to put Band-Aids or a pair of gloves. If you can get a couple of months, even a couple of weeks, you'll be able to kind of stop this and try to give her something else to do while she's on the toilet. Something to play with, a Rubik's Cube, something to keep her busy. You want to stop this as soon as you can, especially if it's new behavior.
If you can do like a daily positive reinforcement.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Lily, we used to stop Lily skip picking with stickers.
Yes,
Like, who would've
yeah.
thought?
If they're little enough, yes, you
I
can do
had
it, and
a
you
whole
want to do it
drawer.
as soon as you can.
Well, so
In the bathroom, and it was
they
like, oh,
find
you pick a
something
prize,
else,
you know.
Something.
Yeah. Really, for real. Like, pick a prize while you poo,
Yeah.
like, whatever. Whatever,
But I
right?
feel like sometimes she's tricking me, like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom, and then she's sitting there, and I'm like, did you go yet? And
So
she's
maybe
like,
it's
no.
just toilet toys, right? Maybe it's just something she does while she's on the toilet.
But it's like
She's
beyond
going in
that
there
too,
to do
like
that.
it's wherever she can go, like, oh, I'm
I
gonna go to
know.
my room for a second
I know.
and get
Wanna
this,
try to
and then
stop
I go
this
in
as soon
there
as you can.
and I open the door
Yeah.
and she's like,
Yeah. Because there's some behaviors that you see and you go, well, it might not turn into something else. Skin picking is really something, is you see it early, you want to stop it. Yeah. So I'm actually just going to get right here, and then I'll come back to this side of the room. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Mine is sort of twofold, because I feel like the compulsion and the obsessive compulsive behavior and perseverance really ride together.
Sure.
So my son has an issue with, he's 17, issue with bedwetting. I don't think we've had a dry night ever in his life.
Yep.
And so we wash the bedclothes every day, and you know, it's a thing, and he knows it probably bothers me, and I'm trying not to show
Sure.
it, but you know, and his other thing that is collecting currently is collecting DVDs. So buying them on eBay, tracking the tracking number, where did it leave from, where is it, whatever. And, you know, so I do the limit setting to say, okay, if you're really good on the first of the month, on day 1 of the month, I'll get you one. And then I kind of try to fall away from that, because my husband then gets him one every time he wants one for a peaceful life. So,
that's a problem.
Yeah, so yesterday, getting ready to come here, and then a friend of mine is doing a fundraiser, and then I had to get out of town for so a lot of things, and he picks up on that stress. So he called me on the way, and I'm the way into the thing that she was doing, and he said, you have to get me one. I have to have one for tomorrow, and you can bring me to Walmart. I said, no, I'm not doing it, and I said, I really have to go to a meeting now, and I have to go. So, then I come home, and I can tell the whole household that there's an issue, and now he has peed on the already changed and clean and dry bed, down through all the layers and everything, and so then, later on, washed and dry and everything, and I said, no, you need to make the bed. No, I don't want to, you make it. I said, no, I'm tired, and I got stuff to do, and no, you make it. And I'm like, you make it. So I'm like, how long can we go on with that? And, finally, I have to make it, because he stands there and like it's of no consequence to him.
So it sounds like he really wants these DVDs.
Oh, he wants them bad. Yeah.
So can you combine them with the bedwetting behavior? If it's
we tried, for 17, we tried everything.
So you said if you stay dry for 2 nights, you can get a DVD.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Are you sure it's behavioral, the bedwetting?
No, I don't think the bedwetting necessarily behavioral, because he takes so much meds. By the time he goes to sleep, he's zonked.
He's zonked, yeah.
But the volume of urine, if there's something, he must not pee during the day at all. I don't know. We try to make him go every 3 hours, or we tried a million strategies for the bedwetting. Yeah. But yesterday was because of not getting the DVD, he wet the bed. But then the whole argument about, no, you make the bed. I'm like,
you're never going to win that.
He wasn't going to do it.
You're not going to win that.
No way of ever getting around that, because it meant nothing to him.
Yeah, that's a pick your battles moment. Like you truly, you're not going to win that one. But I am concerned about him, intentionally going into his bedroom and peeing on the bed because he was mad at you.
He used to urinate, defecate, whatever at school when he was mad, and that was all we'd seen.
And did that stop though?
That has stopped for the most part.
How?
He once in a while. I guess he's old enough for that to be
embarrassing.
Embarrassing, but being mad enough, he'll still do it.
Do you have plastic sheets so you have all that so he doesn't ruin every mattress?
Right, no, it protects the mattress, but it's hard to make sure that you don't get all the quilt and the...
Of course. Yeah.
Air conditioning 6 degrees.
Yeah.
Have you tried the pee alarm?
I was gonna ask that.
He's on the meds for behavior that I think he does go to sleep and he's so zonked out that...
And you stop fluids early on in the day?
We stop at 5 o'clock and only a little amount at 5 o'clock. We've tried all of the physiological things. We've done everything.
Have you tried something like a DVD for voiding your bladder before bed?
He empties his bladder before bed.
And then he goes again?
Yeah.
It doesn't, I don't know that this is behavioral.
He usually gets up around 5:30, and I'll wake him up even at 4:30 and say, don't pee again in the bed, you can sleep.
But if he's not getting fluid after, early evening, then he pees fully before bed. He shouldn't be peeing like that overnight. Has he been to a urologist?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel behavioral to me. It just does. I know it does when he...
the peeing is when he does it on purpose.
When he does it on purpose, it's separate. But overnight, something's happening. Yeah.
But it's the arguing no, it's time for you to make the...
In that case, I honestly wouldn't even argue with him. Just let it go. For real, just let it go. So we kind of went over, but I'm around tonight, so...
Yeah. Thank you. So will these slides be available? These slides are available